Hey, welcome back, guys. So this is our first talk. So we'll be talking. Abhas will be talking about REST, spread, and destructuring. That's very interesting topic. Abhas has been our previous speakers also, and he do a lot of cool posts on LinkedIn. I really like them personally. So over to you, Abhas.
Yeah, uh, this is visible, right? Slides.
Slides are not yet visible.
Okay, one second. Yeah,
Yeah, it came up.
now it's okay. Okay, cool. So hey, hi everyone. So I just wanted to talk a little bit about how REST and spread operator and how the related thing is how array and object literals work. So I'll try to show like when you use this object literals like curly braces, what actually happens internally, right? How is that object created and all of that. So we can probably just start with like array literals, right? So we'll probably start with something very simple, right? So we look at something like this. This creates an array for us. So let's actually move to VS Code and see how that works, right? This is simple. When you have a empty array literal, it just creates a new array with length 0. That's all. Now, what happens when you put the first element into it, right? So you say that okay, I have a array with one element 10. Now we can consider it like this, that we have a new array, let's say something like this, and we say that okay, we have like a index internally. So we'll just say that I is like 0 initially, and what we can do is we can do array of I equal to this value 10. Now I is like 0, so array of 0 equal to 10, right? So what happens when you do this, when you set array of 0 equal to 10, right? So the first thing is that when you set a property like this, like 0, uh, is it something special that is happening for arrays, or is it the same thing that happens for objects where you can set any key, right? So for arrays, what happens is when you say that okay, array of 0 equal to something, this 0 gets converted to a property key, right? So we'll look at like what other things property key does, but in general it means that this will get converted to a string. So we basically, just like a normal object, we have a key whose value is the string 0, and then we set the value 10 here, right? And there is also something else happening internally when you set the 0 property. So whenever you set any index property like this, right? So index property, I mean, is that it has to be like a integer which is greater than equal 0, right? So basically something like something in the range of 0 to, there is a higher range for array indexes, something like 2 to the power 32 minus 1. So if you have like a integer within that range, then something special happens within the array, right? So what happens special is that it will also increment the length automatically. So even though we are only setting this property 0, it will automatically set the array dot length equal to something like 0 plus 1, right? So it will set the array dot length to be 1. So basically when you do this, you get an array with a property length whose value is 1 and a key 0 whose value is 10, right? This is still fine. We are just getting an array with like a single element. But what happens? So similarly, okay, if we put like multiple elements, that happens in a similar way, right? So we can do like I plus plus and do the same thing, right? If we do the same thing, array of 1 becomes 20. This is simple. Now what happens if you put like comma comma, right? So if you put like two commas with or without a space, how does that work? So this gets treated as a empty index in the array. Okay. So what does like empty index probably mean? You would normally think that this is similar to 10 comma undefined comma 20, right? That is a normal assumption, because like in JavaScript, if we don't provide something, that gets initialized to undefined. But that is actually not the case here. Okay, so let's say if you have like this comma comma, which is like an empty index, what is actually happening internally? So let's say at till this point we have array with the element 10, right? Now we have to decide something about this element. So what happens is that it only updates the length. Okay, it doesn't set any property of 1. So just to like repeat, you'd normally assume that it do something like this: array of 1 equal to undefined. But this does not happen. Okay, this is not happening internally. This key is not set at all. But if you think about it, if this key is not being set, then this length will also not update automatically. So it has to like manually update the length here. So it will do array.length equal to 2, basically I plus 1, right? So I would be like 1, here it will become 2. So when you have a missing index, only your length gets incremented, but that key is not set on the array. So yeah, this is one thing. What else? So I guess the next thing is that what happens if you do like a spread operator in here, right? So let's say we have a sum array which has like a few elements already, and then you try to spread that sum array into a new array, right? What happens in this case? So in this case, how it actually works is, let's say we call this as a. In this case, how it actually works is that whatever you do spread upon, right? So you do dot 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 with anything. This thing, let's say some array, gets treated as a general iterable, right? What I mean is that JavaScript internally doesn't care that this thing is a array or not, but it can be anything which implements this iterable iterator protocol, right? So let's actually look at what that protocol means. Let me actually go to Chrome. Sorry. Okay. So let's say we similarly have that same array, some array, visible, and we have three things: 10, 20, 30. When you say that array is a iterable, what actually is happening internally is that this dot 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 will get array of symbol dot iterator. Okay, anything which is a iterable has this special key called symbol dot iterator, right? This is a special inbuilt symbol. So that is actually a function. So it will call that symbol dot iterator to get a new iterator. Okay, so it sounds a little bit confusing between like iterable and iterator, but the idea is that this array implements this method symbol dot iterator, and if you call that, you get a new iterator. That's it, right? So fine, we get a new iterator, and how is how is this thing useful, right? How do you get the values out of the array using the iterator? So iterator has a simple method dot next. Okay, so if I call it dot next, it gives me the first value. See, there is a value 10, which is the first element in the array, and it returns me in this format like an object which says done false and value is 10. So done false basically means that okay, this iterator is not yet finished. You can still call this iterator and get more values. And values 10 simply means that okay, because it is not finished, I can provide you this single value which is 10, right? So when you actually do dot 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 sum array, it does something like this. It creates a iterator out of it and then keeps on calling it dot next till the values are available. So if I call more and more, I'll get 20 and 30. But after 30, if I again call it, see, it will tell me that done is true and my value is undefined, right? So done true means that now it is not going to provide any more values. So the dot 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 operator can stop right there. Okay. So if we actually sort of, if you actually go back here, right, we can sort of say that it is doing the same thing. I guess we could copy it from here. And then it will keep on calling it.next and adding them. So for example, if we again show how it is working, so initially you will have a array with 0 length, and then it will create this iterator, right? And maybe it will get the first value out of it like this. And while this is not done, So while not it value dot done, right? Because you remember, if done is true, that means the iterator has finished. And the next thing it will do is, let's say we also have a index here, I equal to 0. So while not it value dot done, we'll basically set this new index with the new value on the existing array. So we'll do it value dot value, right? And maybe like increment the I and get the next value here. So when you do dot 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 of some array, right, this is how it is working internally. It creates a new array. It keeps like a internal I value, and then it gets a iterator out of this old array, and it will just keep on calling dot next on that iterator till done is not true, right? Whenever it says done true, it will stop, and that will be all the values that gets added in the new array. So this is how your rest operator is working internally. Now this is still fine, that okay, we understand that arrays have a inbuilt iterator, right? So this symbol iterator function or method that is already defined on all kind of arrays, right? So maybe we can also look at how arrays will actually implement this, right? Because if we say that okay, array already have an inbuilt iterator, how does that work, right? So we'll again let's just start with some kind of array. Let's say some array. So what we're trying to look at is how is this array getting this method symbol dot iterator. Now the thing is that it is getting that method because array dot prototype, right? So through the prototype chain, it already has access to that method. So array dot prototype basically has a special method on the key symbol dot iterator, and this is how, let's say, the function will sort of look like, right? So the first thing is that okay, this should be a function, and if I call this function, it is supposed to return me a object which has a next method, right? So we know till this much, that a symbol dot iterator, if you call it, it's supposed to return a thing with a next method. But how will this work, right? So let's say this will be a function, and the simplest thing I can think of is that it will basically try to return some kind of a array with some kind of a index, and try to increment this index every time. But you have to think of it, right? How will it get access to the original array? So if you call a iterator on the sum array, how will this method get access to sum array, right? So when this thing is called, when this method is called, this value here, that is equal to sum array. But if it tries to do if it tries to access this here within the next method, then that will not work, right? Because if you think of it, this is a method, so this value within the method is this object, right? Is the object on which it is defined. It is not the array on which it was called, right? So what it will basically do is it will keep an internal property when it is being created. So when it is being created, it will store the array on which this thing is called. And we also said that okay, we want to return some kind of an index, right? So maybe we'll also put an index with, let's say, the initial value being 0. So now when you try to get the first value out of this dot next method, what it can simply do is it can access the array and return me the value of that index, right? So it seems like this is all it is doing. It is returning some kind array with the index. But of course we need to also increment index. So let's say we do something like this. We'll set the value index plus plus and return that value. But now if you think a dot next doesn't return the value directly, right? So it needs to return that object of that shape, like value done is true or false, and the value is the actual value that you want, right? So okay, this should be an object instead. and let's say initially it will be done false because it has more values, and value will be the thing that you have taken out of it. This is fine. This will work till the array has more and more values. But what, like, how will you reach the condition when done is true, right? So we should ideally after a few iterations the array should get completed, right? It should say that okay, done is true, there is no more value. How do we know that that is the case? So okay, we can probably check, the array length and see if this index exists on that or not. So we can do something like this. Let's say now that if this dot array dot length is, let's say, greater than my index, or the opposite condition, then we should be returning this thing, right? So if I call like this, it will return it. But else, so basically if I have completed all the values, then it should just say that done is true, and I don't really have any value in here. So this is actually how the inbuilt array iterator is working. Now there is one more thing. Let's actually look at that in our console first. Yeah, let's actually refresh this. So you have our sum array will have like a it equal to, yeah. So we have our iterable, right? And I can do it dot next. So initially it will give me, okay, 10, 20 and 30. Now the question is that what happens if I insert more elements into the array now? So like if I call next again, it will tell me that okay, done is true and all the values are completed. But before doing that, what if I do some array dot push and put another value in here, 40, right? Now if I call it dot next, will this value be returned, or will it just ignore that and tell me that done is true? Let's do that. See, now if I call it dot next, it is actually giving me the new value, right? So now it seems like okay, it is actually checking on the life length on the array, life length of the array, right? It is checking directly array dot length and then returning me this value. It is not storing some kind of a initial length and stopping when that initial length is reached, right? So it seems fine. If I push new elements into the array, that will get returned in dot next. But let's do it once more. Let's say if I call id.next now, now it is saying that okay, done is true and value is undefined, right? So this iterator is completed. But what happens if we do the same thing again, right? What if we put again new elements into the array? Will my dot next return that or not? So let's try that and see. Now it doesn't return me the new elements, right? If my iterator has already completed and if I still try to push new elements into the array, these new elements don't get returned, right? So why is this happening, and like how is this implemented, right? Because it seems a little odd. Before the iterator is completed, if I push new elements, then those are returned. But after the iterator is completed, if I push new elements, these new elements are not returned, right? It seems weird because either it should be working on a static length or it should be working on the dynamic length, right? So the idea of like why this doesn't work, right? One might think that okay, this is some kind of a bug in the specification or the implementation, but that is actually not the case. So this is more of a implicit contract of your iterator, right? So the idea is that once your iterator has told that done is true, right? So once it has returned this object where done is true, if you call that iterator again and again, right? If you call it again and again, doesn't matter what happened in between, right? It should never give any more value, right? So once the iterator has completed, it should not give you any more value when you call it again and again, right? So this is not this is not enforced as such by the language, but this is more of a implicit contract that whether the array inbuilt iterator or your custom iterator, both are supposed to maintain this contract, right? So if you actually go back here, if you think about it, right, our implementation here, that is actually not enforcing that
Okay.
contract. So
Abhas,
if you,
sorry to.
yeah,
So there is a question which just popped up, and there are, I think, four upvotes to that. So would you like to
yeah,
answer
yeah,
that? That was similar to your the current concept what you explained.
yeah. Can you tell me the question? I cannot see this thing.
Yeah, sure. So the question asked by Vishal Sahu is push and spread same or different?
Push and spread.
Yeah.
No, so push is basically adding a new element to the array, right? So if we look at some array now, we have two more elements, 40 and 50, but spread will be different. Spread will be when, like what we saw a little bit earlier, when you try to take out all the values from an existing array. So yeah, those are different.
And the second is on similar line. What is the use of symbol? What will happen if I use iffy in symbol.iterator?
uh okay, so I didn't get the second part of the question. It's like iffy with symbol.iterator.
Yeah.
Okay, so let me actually go back here, right? Okay, so right, what is a symbol, right? So symbol is like why is it stuck here? Oops. Okay, so some of my screen is stuck. Can you hear me actually?
I can hear you, Avash, but your screen share is lost.
Okay. One second. Okay, so I'll just see if I can fix this. Okay, so symbol basically means like it's like a, okay, it's working now, I think. Yeah. Is my screen visible now?
Not yet.
Okay.
Yeah,
Now it is.
yeah, it is. Yes. Yeah. So, Avash, would you like to take the questions in between or at the end? What do you prefer?
Yeah, I think I can check the questions now because else it
Okay,
will be
cool.
very long. Yeah. Right. So symbol is like a special type of key, right? So normally we set keys like a string, right? You do like a dot b equal to c. So in this case, what happens is that this becomes like a string b, right? It becomes like this. Uh, but symbol is little bit different, where they are never going to collide. So if I create a symbol for a, and if I try to again create a symbol for a, right, these two are going to be two different values basically. So when like when so in this kind of special cases, right, where they want to add a method which anyone can implement to provide their own iterator, right? In that case, they usually prefer to use symbols so that it will not collide with your normal properties. So if you basically have a property with the name iterator, these two can exist simultaneously. They will not like overwrite each other. So like this is the case where symbol is useful. Yeah. What was the other question, Batra?
I think that's all. You can go ahead.
Okay. Okay. Sure. Yeah. So yeah, what I was actually saying earlier is this thing that if I do dot next, right, before it is completed, it will return me the new values, but after it is completed, it will not return me the new values, right? So how it might be implemented internally, right? Now, if you think of it here, that is all not actually working right now. Why is that the case? Let's say, okay, so let's say my array length is 1, right? And call it the second time, my index value is 1, and sorry, yeah. So if my, let's say my array has like only one element, let's say array has only one element 10, right? If I here in the current implementation, if I call dot next the first time, my I is 0, right? My I here is 0, and that is like less than the length, so it will return me this new value, I know the first value 10, right? If I call dot next again, what will happen is in this case my index will again get yeah, my index is now 1, right? My index is now 1, so that is not less than the length. So in which case it will just tell me this, that done is true and value is undefined, right? But here in the current implementation, if I again put a new element 20, and again if I call dot next, right, what is again going to happen is that, okay, that now my index is 1, but my length has updated to 2, right? My length has updated to 2, which means that 1 is less than 2, and then again it will keep, giving me new values, right? So in my current implementation, this is basically wrong, because again, even after saying done is true, it is still giving me the new values. So how do we make it like this, that once it has reached this condition, right, once it has reached this part, it never goes into this part again, right? So we need some kind of a special operation here. So what is done internally is that it sets the this dot array to undefined. Okay, so whenever the iterator is finished, it will set this dot array to undefined. But that might be a problem, right? Problem meaning that if we again call it, it will try to go to this condition, right? And undefined dot length will give you some error. So we can handle that in a special way. So we can initially check that, okay, if my this dot array is undefined, then again say that done is true. So this will basically again make sure that if once we have reached this condition, once the iterator is finished, it will never again reach this condition, because it will get caught in this part, and it will always keep saying that, done is true, like that. So yeah, that is how iterators work. um, the other thing is actually, we don't have it here, but okay, I think we can clear it. So iterators can also implement a special method called dot return. Okay, so this is like not implemented for arrays, but it is implemented for other things like, generators and other things. So what this is supposed to mean is, let's say that you are taking values out of a iterator, right? And let's say you have taken out the first value, and now you have figured that, okay, I don't want to take out any more value, right? So in that case, you basically want to give a chance to the iterator to clean up itself, right? Because it might do like memory allocation and all of that. So it has a special, it has like a optional special method, it.return, right? And if you want to close your iterator without taking out all the values, you can basically call it.return, and that would ideally clean up things within the iterator, right? So the inbuilt array iterator doesn't actually implement that, but if you want, you could implement that yourself. So we could do something like, we have a return method, and if you call this thing, we'll anyway do the same thing. We'll set this dot array to undefined, right? This makes sure that the link back to the original array is removed, right? This is important because, if your array iterator always keeps holding a link to the array, right, that will never get garbage collected. So it's usually better that, whenever your iterator is finished, you actually remove the link to the original array. So yeah, this is how, let's say, array iterators work. What else? Okay, so we basically looked at how arrays work. Maybe we can look at how object literals work, right? So this is a bit more simple in these cases. So let's say we have a simple object literal like this. This will just create a new object and return that, right? Now what happens if we again have a syntax like this? we have ABC and the value is 1, 2, 3, right? So like we discussed earlier, so this ABC gets converted to a string, and this is what happens. So it sets the key, which is the string ABC with this value 1, 2, 3, right? So this is again simple, we already know this, but let's look at a more a different bit of a use case for this. So it's again the same kind of a syntax. You have a key ABC, but now your value is a function, right? Now your value is a function like this. So if we actually go to our code, okay, let's say I have a where my value is ABC, and is ABC, and my value is a function, right? So this seems fine. If I do a dot ABC, I can actually see the function. So this property is being set, but there is something special happening in this case, right? So this function is a anonymous function, right? This function doesn't actually have a name in here, but if we try to do a dot ABC dot name, right? If we try to look at this function's name, this is now going to give me the name of the property where this was set, right? A dot ABC, like just the property ABC. But you might think that this is like a dynamic value, but that is not the case. So if I do a dot def equal to ABC, right? So if I assign the same function to a new property and check the name there, but that is not going to change. So it's going to take the name of the property where it is being set initially. Okay, so this is actually very similar to how it works for other cases. Okay, so I can do it also like this. If I do const ABC, right, and here I declare a function, it's very much same. This and this case is very much same. Okay, so basically whenever you try to create a function and assign it to some kind of a variable at the same time, right, if it is an anonymous function like this, then something called named evaluation of the function happens. Okay, so it does named evaluation. What named evaluation sort of means is that it will basically, we can't show it directly, but okay, it will basically create this function first, and then it will do function dot name equal to ABC, right? So if we actually go back to our slide, it does something called named evaluation, where it creates this function temporarily, and it sets that function dot name to the name of this property where you are assigning it, right? Now I think this you cannot actually do this in your own code, because like dot name is you cannot change the value of dot name, but internally this is sort of what is happening. Anonymous function sort of becomes a named function, right? But it's not exactly the same thing. So let's look at that. So yeah, I would like to, like, if someone would like to answer, right? So let's say we explained what will happen in this case, right? We explained what will happen in this case, but is this one the same as this one? So if someone would like to answer, basically.
Yeah, so if anyone wants to answer, he can put in chat or he can raise hand as well. And I think in the meantime, there is one question also which popped up, and I see a lot of upvotes. Is not it a good practice in JavaScript to never set anything to undefined? So it's asked by Purva State.
Mm-hmm. Right. Um, I guess, yeah. I mean, in the implementation, you could also do it the other way, right? You could set it to like null and check that, but like this is how the specification says it works internally. But yeah, the main idea is, just what we said, that if your iterator is finished and if you call it again, it should never return the value. Yeah.
Okay. So the answer came for this not same. So it's answered by Cheslin Kaur. So both are not same. That's what she's saying.
Both are not same.
Yep.
Okay, right. But what would be the difference? Yeah, if someone would like to say. So basically we have like a ABC property here and then an anonymous function, or you can do it in the same way here also, versus if we have a ABC function and then we have a named function here again. Okay, cool. So I'll try to explain, like there is a little bit of difference in these two cases, right? So yeah, they are not exactly the same, right? So I'll try to write, like show you what the difference is. So can I go it here? Okay. Okay. So one of the, so we like saw it within an object, but it works similarly if I just declare a function here, right? Or maybe we can do it within an object itself. It's fine. Yeah. So we'll have an object one here. We'll create a property ABC, right? And then we'll pass a anonymous function, right? This is fine. Now we want to see that if this anonymous function can call itself somehow, right? So maybe one way is that, okay, one way is that we can try to maybe do object one dot abc, but what if we try to call this function by its own name, right? So if I try to do it, will what will be the value of abc within this, right? Can it call itself again using this name or not, right? So that is one thing. Similarly, we can do the other case, which is what if this was a named function, right? Then can it call itself using the same name abc, right? So what we're basically trying to see is that if we have these two different kind of functions, does it bind the function's name within the function scope, right? So let's call both of them. If I do object one dot abc and call it, right, you will see that, okay, it says abc is not defined, right? So it is basically saying that like in my scope there is no abc, and because this is like a property within object one, so this one is also not available. So this function cannot easily call itself without like using the whole object name and dot abc, all of that, right? But what happens in the second case? If I do object 2.abc, right, in this case it can refer to itself using the same name, right? See here, object 2.abc is basically the same function, right? So this means that, okay, if you have like a named function expression, if you have a named function expression, then this same name is available as a variable here, right? So within this scope basically there is like a, so you can say like a hidden variable abc which refers back to the same function. Okay, so this is like a small difference basically. Okay, and yeah, this name devaluation happens for like both normal function and arrow functions if they are like anonymous. So okay, so we have covered till this much. The next thing is this kind of expression, right? Within an object, instead of saying that, okay, my property name is abc, right, you can say that, okay, my property name is whatever is the value of this variable. So let's say if I go back here, we already saw this way of defining. I can say object is something like this, where my key is abc and my value is 1 2 3. Or else what I can say is that I have a variable name whose value is the string abc, right? And I want to set this property, set this name dynamically, right? So in that case, what you can do is you can basically use this other syntax where you can pass in any expression within this part, right? So in this case, okay, we'll just say name and then the value is 1 2 3, right? So now if we see, it is basically similar to the previous one. But how is that happening, right? Because here we are passing here we are saying it's something called name, but the key that we are getting is something called ABC. So in this case, what happens is that this variable or whatever expression you put here, right? You can even put like a function call here. So that function call will get evaluated, and the value of that will get converted to a string, and that will be set as the key on the object. Okay. So what is basically happening is that it will eval what is name, and in this case, name will say that okay, I am the string ABC, and so that will be used as the key directly. Okay. Uh, and there is another case. The other case is so we kind I like this is I guess little bit less used, but objects can have two kind of keys, right? One kind of key is like we saw, it can be a string. The other kind of key is that it can actually have a symbol as a key. Okay. So in that case, you'll also have to use this kind of a syntax where you say that my key is this expression which is symbol of something. So if I again go back here, I can basically say that my object 2 and the key here is symbol ABC and the value is 1, 2, 3, right? So if you basically notice, this is actually different from a string ABC. So if I again do object.abc equal to 4, 5, 6, right? Then they will not override each other. Oh, sorry, it's object 2. Now if I look at object 2, now you can see that basically my symbol and my string can have like same name, but they will exist separately, right? So just to sort of repeat, what is actually happening is that if you put like an expression here, it gets converted to a property key. Okay. And how two property key works is something like this, right? This thing will get converted to a property key. What that means is that if it is a string or a symbol, right, then use that as the key. But if it is not a string or a symbol, right, maybe if I put like maybe if I put like true, like a boolean value true, or if I put like an object, right, so then that will get converted to a string, and that string will be actually used as the key here. So yeah, like if you think about it, this is the only syntax of object literal where you can use a symbol as a key, right? In all the other cases, you had to like use a string as a key, but this is the only syntax where you can provide a symbol as a key.
Yeah, so Avash, I think there's a question on similar line. Will name evaluation will happen for IFI?
Okay. So I mean, I'm not sure. So let's say what will name evaluation happen for IFI, right? But you mean like if this thing is getting called here? I'm not sure.
Yeah, it's asked by Ricky. Maybe he can elaborate.
Yeah. You mean like this, or how is it?
Ricky, you can raise your hand if there is any more to this question.
Okay, I think if you want, you can ask in the end also.
Yeah, sure. So we take this at the end as well.
Yeah.
You can proceed.
Yeah, but what I think he asked, like what from what I understand is, right, that is actually interesting, is something like this, right? I guess the indirect question might, like a similar question might be, right? Uh, One thing I said is, okay, if I declare a function directly here, then it has a named evaluation, right? But what if I return what if I have a variable which is a function here? Let's say, remove this. So let's say I have a function declared outside, right, which is fn, and now I say that my ABC property is this function, right? So now will this function suddenly get a name which is which is the string ABC or not, right? So that will actually not happen. I think so. So if I do object.abc.name, it will be a, yeah, it will be just, the initial name that it had, which is like fn, right? So why this doesn't happen is that you have to sort of think of it in a different way, right? Which is that this is one syntax and the other syntax was like this, something like this also, it's fine. Right? So between this syntax and this syntax, so you have to think of what your JavaScript engine is seeing actually, right? So when it looks at this syntax, right, it sees that okay, on the right hand side I have a function declaration, right? Anonymous function declaration. There is no name, right? So here it has, like, it can look at the syntax and decide that okay, this is a unnamed function, right? So it has to first of all evaluate this thing. It has to evaluate this syntax. So while evaluating this function itself, it can say that okay, don't evaluate the function like a normal one, do a named evaluation of the function, right? So here it is basically seeing the syntax and evaluating the value. But in this case, right, when it is seeing at the syntax, it is seeing that okay, my right hand side is just a expression or just a variable, right, which holds a value of a function. So this function is like already created. I cannot like again do a named evaluation of this thing, right? So that is sort of the difference. This works at a syntax kind of a level, instead at like looking at the direct value of it. Answer. So I have a id